1, 2, 3, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Alrighty then, just testing. Okay, so this is weekly catch up out and about with Trev, episode 21. This is shot 3, take 2, because someone forgot to hit record on the cameras. Alrighty then, so here we go, take 2. Alright, so welcome to weekly catch up out and about with Trev. Over the last few weeks I've been doing a lot of filming in and around the city and even as far away as Echuca. Next week I'm actually going to Ballarat to do the second half of my White Night special. I recently covered the White Night event here in Melbourne and looking forward to heading up to Ballarat and seeing what sort of a display they can put together. In terms of equipment, I've slowly been able to accumulate quite a bit of kit, and people who have watched my episodes over the last few weeks, I hope you've seen them slowly evolve. I think my filming's getting better, I think my editing's getting better, and maybe even my on-screen presentation's getting better. This is not what I want to do, by the way. I don't want to be in front of the camera, I want to be behind it, but anyway, there you go. But last week I got a little bit of extra money and was able to invest a bit more, so I was able to buy a bigger tripod for my main bit of kit, and that meant I could also buy a smaller camera, and the old tripod went across to the little camera. So I've now got 2 cameras, which is great. The little camera is a Canon HF R706, and that now complements my Canon XA30, which is my workhorse camera that's got the Rode NTG 4 Plus shotgun mic attached, and the one that I put the little Lume Cube light on from time to time when I'm doing stuff. And having 2 cameras is going to give me some opportunities to play with angles, and certainly when I'm interviewing, I've got some really cool interviews coming up in the coming months. So one of which is with a friend of mine who travels the world and does all sorts of crazy stuff, and I'm looking forward to asking her just where hasn't she been. But that's coming up. I'm also looking towards once we get into winter, doing some other episodes about defensive architecture, which is how you've got people like Melbourne City Council who are approving architecture that prohibits the homeless from sleeping, in the front of, under verandas or foyers and things like that, where you physically, and this can be in the form of spikes and barriers and all sorts of quite almost archaic methods of physically stopping people from sleeping on the street. You may also know that I've featured extensively the recent protests about Melbourne City Council's attempts to criminalise the homeless and basically make rough sleeping on the streets illegal. I see this as an absolute breach of human rights, and I think that Melbourne City Council need to be taken to task over it. The White Night protest, which happened at the State Library, where they were able to beam some words up in the front of the State Library. I'm surprised they got to run it as long as they did, to be honest. Well, there you go. I was positive they'd be shut down, but they weren't, so maybe there's a bit of humanity there. There's another protest happening next Friday, which is the 3rd of March, and that's going to be at the Town Hall, and another sleep out, and just to try and voice the idea that we just don't need these types of bylaws being passed. There needs to be more done to help the homeless, not simply criminalise them, which is what Melbourne City Council is attempting to do. So in terms of my film production and digital video production and what have you, and the stuff I do, I've put together quite a bit of kit. Like I say, I've got my workhorse camera, the XA30, which is an amazing bit of kit, and I love it. And I've now got the little camera, which gives me some other options, which is going to be nice. I've also got some radio communication, which is pretty slick. These I've covered these before, and I've talked about the fact that they're waterproof, and we threw them in the spa, and they are waterproof, which is great. Ironically, on the night we thought we'd be filming in the rain, it turned out it didn't rain, but there you go. I've got my Benro slider, and here's some footage of me slapping that on a bit earlier. It was the first time I put it on my new Aero 4 tripod from Benro, and the whole kit works together really nicely. I'm looking forward to giving that a bit of a crack in the coming weeks. My Zoom audio recorder, and here's some shots of it. I put it on my little hiking tripod, and that just gets it off the deck and makes it a little bit harder to trip over, or maybe it makes it easier to trip over, I suppose. You walk into it, but I like getting it off the deck. Also, from an audio recording point of view, you're better off having your mic up off the deck, because down towards the floor, things can get all messed up and you get weird signals being, signals being bounced off things and what have you. Whereas you get it up a little bit higher, it's better, and it's basically why our ears are on our head, not in our ankles, I suppose. This unit base, like I said, we set it up a couple of times on location recently, and got it knocked around in the wind, and it tried to take off when we were down at next to the art centre, and that was a bit exciting. A couple of things I've learned, and I'll go through this quickly. The XA30 is a great camera, don't get me wrong. The little adjustments for the microphone gain on the top, the wheels turn nice, but sometimes when you want to do just a little bit of a change, it gets tricky. Also, the actual XLR inputs, with some cables, it is damn hard to get them out. Like really, you got to really reef on it. And I was worried that I was going to break the handle off the top of the camera. Apart from that, I think the LCD screen could come around a little bit further. I decided to leave a gazebo set up overnight and take some photos of it lit up at night with the reflective parts. Obviously the witches' hats, but also I've got the ropes also are good. And this is great because if you've got it set up, you don't want people walking into the ropes. As you can see, a cat wandered through, and he lives next door. But then I also played around with the infrared light that the XA30 camera's got, and you can do night filming with it, and it's got a white light, and as you can see, everything's lit up pretty good. But it's also got a green light, so depending on what you want, and that was pretty interesting as well. So just playing around with that. I'm not sure when I'll use it. I have used it for a couple of things. The following morning I started packing up the damn thing, and then I realised that the roof was still wet, so I then had to leave it sit and wait for the sun to get across and dry it out before I could finish packing it up. And by the time I'd got that all done, it was basically halfway through the day already. Alright, now that I'm back in the office, I can show you a little bit better what I've got. And I think it's important that whatever job you want to do, you've got to have the right tools for the trade. You know, mechanics got his toolkit, plumbers have got all their kit, you got builders have got specialist gear they got to use. And I think, you know, video production's no different to that. You've got to have a good camera, you've got to be able to do good video, but the more important component is audio, and that's why I've got things like the H6. I use a really good shotgun mic. This is the Rode NTG 4 Plus, which is just amazing. I've got a couple of options. I can mount it on the camera here like this. I can also put it on a mic stand. It's got an adjustment and an adapter for that. So, especially because I do a lot of filming on my own, I can set that up if I need to, make sure it's out of shot, and off I go. Having the second camera will be great during interviews, as I've mentioned. So it just adds that little bit of dynamic range to the production. Audio is very important, as I've mentioned, and that's why I've invested heavily in audio. I've got different microphones, even a dynamic microphone, which is like what musicians use or singers use. but it enables me, if I was in a noisy environment, like next to a construction site, or maybe I've got a jet flying overhead or something, I could still do an interview if I had to. Obviously things like the radios are handy when we're doing our filming and we had a crew, a number of people on site, and if they're spread out over a distance, or even if they're not spread out, they might only be 20 or 30 feet away. I mean, if you're in a public area, you don't want to be shouting. It looks unprofessional. It is unprofessional. And we've done things where we've been across the Yarra River, for instance, a couple hundred metres. We certainly weren't going to shout across that. But we've also done simple things where we've just been across a road. And it's nice to be able to use the radios, talk quietly into the mic. Most people don't even know what's going on. Right about now, you might also be thinking, hang on a sec, there's his main camera. You see he's got two. This is his little one. How the hell is he producing this? Well, actually, if you go right back to my first half a dozen episodes, I certainly didn't have this. I didn't have all this gear, none of this. And what I was using was my little Nikon AW110 camera, which is waterproof. That's the one I take when I go camping or bushwalking, and I've used it in the snow and things like that. But like I've said, audio is very important. So what I also use is a lapel mic, and I've just got it into a little micro voice recorder, which is a Olympus, and as I picked it up, I was just wanting to check it was recording. That would have been embarrassing. But so this is a little micro recorder hooked into the lapel mic. Ironically, I can't use this lapel mic with my zoom, which is frustrating like you wouldn't believe. Anyway, so that's basically runs you through what I've got, what I've been able to put together. In terms of the differences between the two tripods, the Aero 2, and like I say, it is over-engineered just to hold this little guy, but I did have the XA30 on it. It worked great. The Aero 4's got a little bit better panning, a little bit more control. The tilting's certainly more fluid and more just smoother. It's nice, and you can lock it off, and you can still got some resistance there. It's nice. The other big advantage for me is with the Aero 2, you've got your quick release plate. It's on the tripod. It locks into place fine, not going anywhere. That's great. But I'm using a bit bigger camera, and maybe if you're using a DSLR, it'd also be an issue. But because my camera's got the microphone on top, it actually is a little bit front heavy. So what I like being able to set the plate back a little bit. I've got quite a bit of movement. If you look here, I can go right forward. I can come back there. That's quite a range, and it just means I can bring this back. I've even got a little notch on the side of it that I've put there that tells me right about there's where I want it to be. Lock it off, and it's not going anywhere. So, which is good. So that's about it in terms of the channel and what's coming up. I really appreciate all the people that have been coming past and watching. And look, my numbers aren't massive, and I'm not worried about that at the moment. My YouTube channel's a place for me to play and just muck around with. If you don't like what I'm putting on, don't watch it. No. But you know, I think I am covering some of the important issues, and it's and certainly things like the homeless issue and affordable housing, and Melbourne City Council's current attempts to try and criminalise the homeless for sleeping on the streets, I think are certainly important issues that I'm glad to be able to feature on the channel. In terms of that, there's another protest scheduled for this Friday night, 3rd of March, and it's going to be out at the front of the Melbourne Town Hall, and it's a sleep-in, speak out, probably be a bit of police presence around, and it should be interesting, and that's going to be all night, and they're going to sleep there all night, and I'm thinking about taking my sleeping bag this time. I might try and get a couple of hours sleep myself while I go to this thing. But and then the following night, I'm actually off to Ballarat to cover Ballarat's White Night event, which is going to be awesome, and I'm looking forward to that. That's also going to be another big night, but it's going to be great, and then I'll be able to put together my White Nights special. But it'll be interesting to see. I think with Ballarat's historic architecture, and if they light it up right and they do it right, I think it could be quite impressive. So I'm looking forward to that. And then later, hopefully later in the month or early next month, I get to interview a good friend of mine, Emma, who travels the world. She's got an amazing Facebook page. Like every week she's somewhere different. She actually subscribes to my channel, which is great. And I'm certainly looking forward to sitting down with her. And we're still trying to organise a really cool location, but that'll fall into place. And that's where this thing will come in. And having the second camera for that, so I can make it a really cool interview. And I think people will find that very interesting. One of the questions I'm going to ask her is, where hasn't she been in the world? And it'll be interesting to see her response. See and hear her response, sorry. Anyway, that's it.